I'm so glad you're here with us today. We're diving deep into A Course in Miracles, and if you're just joining our community, you might be wondering what this course is all about. I'd love to invite you to check out the very first video on this channel, where I break down exactly what A Course in Miracles is, how it came to exist, and why it's been transforming lives for over 5 decades. It'll give you the perfect foundation for everything we explore together here. Now, let me ask you something. Have you ever walked away from a conversation feeling completely misunderstood? Or maybe you've tried to express something meaningful, something true, and watched your words land like stones in silence. Perhaps you've been in the middle of an argument where both people are talking but nobody's actually listening. We've all been there. Communication, the very thing that's supposed to connect us, often becomes the battlefield where our deepest disconnection plays out. Here's what's fascinating. We communicate constantly. Every single day, we're exchanging thousands of words, texts, emails, conversations. And yet so much of the time, we feel isolated, unseen, unheard. It's like we're all speaking different languages, even when we're using the same words. Why is that? What's going wrong in this fundamental human exchange? Today, we're exploring one of the most profound sections in A Course in Miracles, the light of communication. This section appears in Chapter 14, which is all about teaching for truth. And what you're about to discover here might completely shift how you experience every interaction in your life. Because the Course isn't interested in teaching you better communication techniques or clever conversation strategies. It's pointing to something much deeper. It's revealing why communication fails in the first place and how it can be transformed into something sacred. The truth that A Course in Miracles presents is this: communication isn't really about the words we speak. It's about the purpose we give to those words. Every time you open your mouth, every time you send a message, every time you engage with another person, you're making a choice. You're choosing between 2 teachers, 2 interpreters, 2 completely different purposes. And that choice determines whether your communication becomes a weapon that separates or a light that joins. Think about the last difficult conversation you had, maybe with a partner, a friend, a colleague, or a family member. What were you really trying to do? If you're honest, underneath whatever you said, wasn't there often a desire to be right? To prove your point? To defend yourself? To make the other person see their mistake? The ego uses communication as a tool for attack, even when that attack is subtle, even when it's dressed up as being helpful or truthful. But there's another way. There's another teacher available in every moment, one who sees communication as an opportunity for healing, rather than harm. The Holy Spirit, as the Course calls it, uses every exchange as a chance to restore what the ego tried to destroy: our awareness of connection, of unity, of love. What I find so beautiful about this section is how practical it is. This isn't abstract philosophy. This is about your actual conversations, your real relationships, the moments when you feel frustrated because you're not being understood, or when you're tempted to shut down because you feel attacked. The light of communication shows you exactly what's happening beneath the surface of every interaction, and it offers you a way to experience something completely different. So let's explore this together. Let's discover how communication can shift from being a source of pain to becoming a pathway home. Let's start with something that might sound radical. Every single word you speak, every message you send, every conversation you have is serving one of 2 purposes. There's no middle ground. You're either using communication to separate yourself from others, or you're using it to join with them. You're either reinforcing the illusion that you're alone and different and misunderstood, or you're allowing communication to become what it was always meant to be, a bridge back to connection. Now, the ego has a very specific agenda when it comes to communication. It wants to prove that you're separate. It wants to establish that you're right and they're wrong. It wants to defend, to attack, to make sure. Everyone knows exactly where the boundaries are between you and them. And here's the tricky part. The ego is so clever that it can make all of this look completely justified. It can make you believe that you're just being honest, or setting healthy boundaries, or standing up for yourself. But underneath every ego-driven communication is the same core message. I am separate from you, and I need to protect that separation. Think about an argument you've had recently. Really picture it. What were you fighting for? On the surface, maybe it was about who said what, or who did what, or whose version of events was accurate. But go deeper. Wasn't there something else happening? Weren't you on some level trying to prove your individual perception, your separate reality? The ego uses communication as evidence that separation is real. Every disagreement becomes proof that we see things differently, that we are different, that unity is impossible. But here's where it gets really interesting. The Course tells us that the Holy Spirit takes this exact same communication and gives it a completely opposite purpose. Where the ego sees an opportunity to attack and defend, the Holy Spirit sees an opportunity to heal and join. Where the ego interprets words as threats or demands or insults, the Holy Spirit translates every message into one of two things, either an expression of love or a call for love. Let me say that again because it's so important. According to A Course in Miracles, there are only two real communications happening ever: love being expressed or love being requested. That's it. Everything else is just noise, just ego interference, just the static of fear trying to convince you that separation is real. Imagine living from this understanding. Imagine listening to someone criticize you and hearing, underneath their words, a cry for love. Imagine responding to anger, not with more anger, but with the recognition that this person is asking for help, asking to be seen, asking to be connected with. This isn't about being passive or allowing mistreatment. This is about seeing truly. This is about letting the Holy Spirit interpret what's really being communicated. The shift from ego communication to Holy Spirit communication is the shift from conflict to peace, from isolation to intimacy, from words that wound to words that heal. And the beautiful thing is, you get to choose which teacher you're going to listen to in every single interaction. You get to decide whether communication is going to be a weapon or a bridge. This is the foundation. This is where transformation begins. With the simple recognition that there are two ways to communicate and only one of them is real. So if true communication is really just love expressing itself or asking for itself, why does it feel so hard? Why do we spend so much of our lives feeling misunderstood, unheard, disconnected? What's standing in the way? The answer, according to A Course in Miracles, is projection. And this might be one of the most important concepts you'll ever understand about human interaction. Projection is the mechanism by which we take what we can't accept in ourselves and see it in someone else instead. We take our own guilt, our own fear, our own self-judgment, and we project it outward like a movie onto the screen of another person. Then we react to them as if they're the source of what we're feeling. Here's how this plays out in real life. Let's say you're carrying around unconscious guilt about not being good enough. You haven't dealt with it. You haven't looked at it. It's sitting there in your mind, making you uncomfortable. Then someone offers you feedback, maybe even gentle feedback, and suddenly you hear it as harsh criticism. You hear attack. You hear judgment. But here's the truth. You're not hearing them. You're hearing your own guilt reflected back to you through their words. You've projected your self-judgment onto them, and now you're defending yourself against your own thoughts. This is why communication breaks down. We're not actually responding to each other. We're responding to our projections. We're having conversations with ghosts, with shadows, with our own unhealed wounds, dressed up as the person standing in front of us. And then we wonder why we can't connect. Judgment is the other massive block to real communication. Every time you judge someone, you're placing them outside of you. You're creating distance. You're saying, "You are that, and I am not that." And in that moment, communication becomes impossible because you've already decided who they are. You've already written the script. You're not open to actually hearing them because you think you already know. The Course is very clear about this. Judgment and communication cannot coexist. When you're busy evaluating, categorizing, labeling, and condemning, you're not listening. You're not present. You're in your head, running your commentary, protecting your position. Real communication requires openness, and judgment slams the door shut. But here's the miracle. The Holy Spirit doesn't see any of this the way the ego does. When someone speaks to you in anger, the Holy Spirit doesn't hear attack. It hears fear. It hears pain. It hears a desperate call for love. When someone withdraws or shuts down, the Holy Spirit doesn't see rejection. It sees someone who's afraid of being hurt, someone who needs safety, someone who's asking for connection in the only way they know how. This is the translation service the Holy Spirit provides. It takes all the distorted, ego-driven communication and reveals what's really being said underneath. And when you start listening with the Holy Spirit instead of the ego, everything changes. You stop taking things personally because you realize the attack was never about you. You stop defending because you see there's nothing to defend against. You stop judging because you recognize that everyone is either expressing love or crying out for it. This is how the blocks to communication are released. Not by becoming a better speaker, but by becoming a true listener. Not by crafting perfect words, but by letting the Holy Spirit show you what words really mean. Not by protecting yourself from others, but by recognizing that their words are either a gift of love or a request for the love they're missing. When you stop projecting and stop judging, you create space for actual communication. You create space for truth. You create space for connection. And that's when something beautiful becomes possible. Now we arrive at the heart of it all, the light. In A Course in Miracles, light isn't just a metaphor. It represents truth, awareness, the vision of Christ that sees beyond all the ego's illusions. And this light is what makes real communication possible. Without it, we're just exchanging words in the dark, bumping into each other, misinterpreting everything, staying lost in our separate worlds. So what is this light, really? It's the presence of truth in every interaction. It's the Holy Spirit's vision that illuminates what's real and dissolves what's false. When the light enters communication, it reveals something absolutely revolutionary. There is no gap between you and the person you're speaking with. The separation you've been defending, the distance you've been maintaining, the otherness you've been so sure of, none of it is real. The light shows you that communication isn't about two separate beings trying to bridge a gap. It's about one mind remembering itself. This is what the Course means by joining. It's not about agreeing with someone, or liking someone, or even getting along with someone. Joining is the recognition that at the deepest level, you and they are not separate. You share the same source, the same truth, the same identity in God. And when communication happens in the light of this awareness, it becomes something completely different. It becomes holy. Think about a moment when you've experienced real connection with someone, not superficial chit-chat, but genuine meeting. Maybe it was a conversation where you felt truly seen, truly understood, or a moment where you looked into someone's eyes and felt something shift, something open. What was happening in those moments? The light was shining. The illusion of separation was temporarily lifted. You weren't communicating from ego to ego anymore. You were touching something true, something shared, something that exists beyond all the roles and defenses and stories. That's what becomes possible when the Holy Spirit is present in communication. Every exchange becomes an opportunity to remember who you really are. Not the small, separate, frightened self that needs to defend and attack and prove itself, but the self that is joined with all of creation, the self that is love, the self that has never been separate from God. And here's what's so beautiful. When you communicate from this place, you give the other person permission to remember too. Your willingness to see them in the light makes it easier for them to see themselves that way. Your refusal to see them as an enemy or a threat, or even as separate, creates space for them to drop their defenses. Communication becomes contagious healing. One person choosing truth creates a ripple that touches everyone. This is the miracle of communication that the Course is pointing us toward. It's not about finding the right words or avoiding conflict or making everyone happy. It's about letting every interaction be illuminated by truth. It's about choosing to see with the light instead of the darkness. It's about recognizing that when you speak to anyone, you're really speaking to yourself, because there is only one self. Does this mean every conversation will be easy? No. Does it mean everyone will respond the way you hope? Of course not. People are still operating from different levels of awareness, different degrees of willingness. But what changes is your experience. What changes is your peace. What changes is your ability to stay connected to truth no matter what's happening on the surface. When you bring light to communication, you're no longer at the mercy of other people's words or reactions. You're anchored in something deeper. You're remembering that nothing real can be threatened and nothing unreal exists. And from that place, every word you speak becomes an invitation to join, to heal, to return home, together. This is communication as it was meant to be. This is the light shining away all the darkness. This is love recognizing itself in every exchange. So here we are. We've explored how communication can shift from being a tool of the ego, used to attack and separate, into something sacred, a bridge back to unity, to truth, to love. We've seen that every interaction is a choice between two teachers, two purposes, two completely different experiences of reality. And we've discovered that when we let the Holy Spirit illuminate our communication, when we allow the light to shine through our words and our listening, something miraculous becomes possible. The invitation is simple, but it's also profound. Choose the Holy Spirit as your interpreter in every interaction. Before you speak, pause and ask, what is the purpose of these words? Am I trying to separate or to join? Am I attacking or extending love? And when someone speaks to you, especially when their words feel like an attack. Remember to listen beneath the surface. Hear the call for love. See the fear. Let the light show you what's really being communicated. Here's something you can practice today, right now, in your very next conversation. When someone speaks to you, instead of immediately reacting or defending or formulating your response, just pause, take a breath, and silently ask the Holy Spirit, what is this person really saying? What are they really asking for? You'll be amazed at how different things look when you're willing to see truly. Communication isn't just about exchanging information. It's a pathway home. Every time you choose to communicate with love instead of fear, with joining instead of separation, with light instead of darkness, you're taking a step closer to remembering who you really are. You're healing not just your relationships, but your entire experience of reality. I want to thank you so much for being here today, for exploring these deep truths with me. If this resonated with you, if something shifted or opened or became clearer, I'd be so grateful if you'd take a moment to like this video. It helps more people discover this content and find their way to these teachings. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. I post new videos every single day, diving deep into A Course in Miracles, exploring how these principles can transform every area of your life. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Maybe someone you've been struggling to communicate with, or someone who's searching for a different way to connect. And I'd absolutely love to hear from you in the comments. What's your biggest challenge with communication? What shifted for you today? How are you going to practice listening with the Holy Spirit instead of the ego? Your insights and experiences are so valuable, and they create such a beautiful community here. Thank you for walking this path with me. I'll see you tomorrow with another exploration into A Course in Miracles. Until then, may your every word be a light, and may every conversation bring you closer to home.